Are we ready?
Yep.
All right. Welcome to Political Science 370. We'll be going over a couple of research articles today that were selected by David Cockrell and Michelle Johnson. Because we had to change things up because of the coronavirus, David and Michelle will not be presenting, so I'll be summarizing their papers. And my son Michael, who is in the class, will have to ask any questions that he thinks maybe he personally would ask or the class as a whole would ask. So we'll just have to go from there. So we'll do the best that we can with what we have going. Okay, so we'll start with David's article. The title of it is Notable or Not Able. When are acts of inconsistency rewarded? And it appeared in the American Sociological Review. So it kind of starts with an interesting idea that is applicable in a number of disciplines: sociology, psychology, art, a number of fields, right? And that is the idea of consistency and whether or not people tend to like it or not like it. So, Michael, in general, do you think people like consistency or they don't like it?
Definitely like it.
Like it? Why do people like consistency?
Because they like having things be predictable.
Be predictable.
It's safer.
And it's safer.
Yeah.
And cognitively, what's easier, consistency or inconsistency? Consistency, exactly. And so, it's not mentioned in this article, but even people like Galbraith, who was an economist, he said people are cognitive misers. They like simple ideas. They like consistent ideas because it's complexity is difficult and inconsistency is difficult for the mind to process. You look at like actors. A lot of the time, do actors play a very similar role? Yeah. Did John Wayne play a very similar role?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was John Wayne known for playing a very similar role?
Yeah.
Yeah. You look at contemporary actors. That a lot of actors play a very similar type of character, a very similar type of role. Right? Owen Wilson. You can think of a lot of people. They just do comedy and they play a certain type of character. Anyway. So the article kind of starts with that idea. In general, people prefer consistency to inconsistency. But then it asks, under what conditions will people tolerate inconsistency and even reward it, right? And so they decide to conduct an experiment where they kind of look at the art world, and they look at a particular artist, Pablo Picasso, and he was known for being very inconsistent, very creative. All his paintings don't look exactly alike, right?
Yeah.
He's not Monet or whatever. Well, anyway, I don't mean to mock any. Art's not my field, but Picasso is known for being very creative and very inconsistent, right? So they kind of want to explore this idea: is when is inconsistency rewarded, right? So what they do is they basically ask for volunteers at a French business school and they get about 183 volunteers, right? And what they construct is a 2x3 table. And the table looks like this. It's kind of hard to see. They're going to put people into one of 6 different treatment groups, right? And they'll show you works of art. They were all done by Pablo Picasso, but they're going to say they're done by different people, right? And they'll say, these works were done by Pablo Picasso, and they'll show you 4 paintings that are very consistent. And then they'll say these works were done by Pablo Picasso, and they'll show you 4 works that are very inconsistent.
Okay.
Right? Then they did the same thing here. They showed the same 4 works, but they said they were done by this kind of medium status artist, George Brock, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And then they showed you the same 4 works, and they were done, but they said they were done by an artist of low status, this Roger De La something, right? And from the article, just so you can get a feel for this, you can't see these paintings at all.
No.
But the point is, here are 4 paintings, and they were supposed to be consistent, right? And they had 4 other paintings, and they were supposed to be stylistically very inconsistent. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, say you signed up for the experiment, you may have been assigned to this box, right? And you were shown works by Pablo Picasso, and they were very inconsistent. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you signed up for the study, you may have been assigned that treatment. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Then people were asked to rate how good the works of art were aesthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And, okay, looking at this, what do you think the researchers found? If you were in the high status one, and you were shown the 4 inconsistent paintings, do you think people thought they were more pleasing aesthetically than the consistent group, or less pleasing aesthetically?
Less, I'm guessing. Is it more?
In the high stat? Yeah, it's more.
Oh.
See, and that's what's interesting about it, right? Is if the person thought these works were done by Pablo Picasso, right?
Yeah.
And they were inconsistent, and you're looking and you're like, whoa, that's a trip. Whoa, that's really a trip. Wow, that's different. Jeez. Where
Okay.
you know, you're showing those 4 paintings, and you know he's a high status author or painter,
Yeah.
right? Then you look at that and you're like, my goodness, this guy's a creative genius, right? And so they asked, how would you rate the overall aesthetic quality of these works? And if you were shown Pablo Picasso in the inconsistent works, you know, they're all over the place, you're like, these are genius. Give it a really high rating, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the consistent works, like, well, these are good, but, you know, someone who was shown this treatment was like, well, these consistent works, they're good, but honestly, you know, they're all the same.
Yeah.
I would have expected a little more from a guy like Picasso,
Yeah.
right? Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's kind of fascinating about this study. Then in the medium group, right?
Yeah.
What do you think it looked like between the consistent and inconsistent?
About the same, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, actually they were penalized for being inconsistent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're penalized for being inconsistent. People are like, this dude doesn't know what he's doing. He hasn't mastered his craft yet. He's all over the place.
Okay.
And that's what's interesting, right? Is it's all dependent on status. Is people are like, if people in this group rated it lower, and the question comes up, why? Is like, well, he's not able to master a particular type of style.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? And so you can imagine low, same thing, right?
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, this is a low quality author, these works are really inconsistent, this guy just can't get his act together. He's all over the place. He can't master what he's doing. Right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of... And there's a lot of other things going on in this paper. David did an excellent job reviewing them. But the thing is, that's the main finding.
Okay.
Right? Is as far as... If you're a high-status artist, like Pablo Picasso... right?
Mm-hmm.
Then people expect creativity. They expect you to be inconsistent. Because the inconsistency isn't seen as a weakness, it's seen as a strength. Right? They're not questioning, oh, can this guy paint? Yeah, he can paint.
Okay.
You know, and he, as a matter of fact, he paints very well. And so he's able to take it to another level. He's able to experiment and be creative and that type of thing. So, let's stick with the study and then we'll talk about applications in other fields. Some valid concerns with the study. Okay? As I said, the people who participated were students at a French business school.
Okay.
So the knock on experiments is always they're in general very good at establishing internal validity, causality. You know, what was leading these people to give higher ratings to these paintings? The status of the painter, right? So that's very well established with this experimental design. So, you know, causality is really well established. Internal validity is very well established. Experiments are always subject to the criticism that they're not generalizable in other settings. And that the participants are not representative of the overall population. You know, so their external validity is called into question. The degree to which their findings are applicable to different groups or different settings is always called into question, which is fair enough. Next thing, sample size, 183 students, I think it was. That's always, 183 subjects. The more the better, right? So the concern is again, it'd be nice to have a larger sample size, but if they could have done that realistically, they would have. If they had the resources to do that, they probably would have. And 183 was big enough. But think about that. You know, that's 183 people. You got 6 cells. that means you have about 30 in each cell, right? 30 people that are asked or are assigned to one of those 3 cells and asked to say, how aesthetically pleasing do you think this is? How creative do you think this is? Another thing they asked is, what do you think the market value of these works are, right? And so 180 people assigned to 6 different treatments, leaves about 30 people per cell, which, ideally you'd have more than that, right? Okay, now, social science relevance here, right? This actually, if you can see, not able or not. This appeared in the American Sociological Review, which is an excellent journal. Excellent journal. And so obviously there's more going on here than just paintings.
Yeah.
Right? And how people assess the aesthetic value and monetary value and creative value of paintings, right? What would you say is going on? Broader.
Just we respect inconsistency more in people that we think have made it, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
High status. Absolutely. Right? So,
The president.
well,
we won't go there.
Yeah, we won't go there, but just say the business world, right? Or venture capitalists, right? If they're high status, it's like you're putting your money in what? Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
If he makes a financial move that everyone's like, what? I thought, here's how you made your money. Why are you buying this stuff? Mm-hmm. People are more likely to say the guy's a creative genius. That's why he's made so much money. Is he sees opportunities that other people don't. He doesn't just do one thing. Do you know what Warren Buffett says he buys?
No.
Anything that's undervalued.
Oh.
Right? So he's been very straightforward about it. What do I buy? Anything that's undervalued. That's about as all over the place as it gets.
Yeah.
Right? So, I was thinking, in academia, you're more likely to give a well-established professor a little more leash.
Yeah. With
doing something creative. You may even expect it. That was one of the things with Pablo Picasso. This study pointed out was when people say, oh, that's Pablo Picasso, they actually expected him to be more inconsistent. Mm. They expected the creativity, right? Yeah. So, like I said, in academia, when someone's well established, maybe they'll get a little more leash. Mm. The next thing you know, you're doing the Milgram obedience experiments or the Zimbardo prison simulations. I don't know. But, when you're well established, maybe you get a little more leash.
So, Queen can do, Bohemian Rhapsody and everyone's good with it.
Right.
If our band did it might be stupid or something.
Well, exactly, right? Yeah. And so, you guys, it applies in, for paintings, for musicians, for actors, Will Ferrell, we've talked about before. The guy can do so many different things. Yeah. And you're like, I'm just a big Will Ferrell fan. I think he's amazing. And then so you look and you're like, yeah, you expect him to do different stuff. You don't want him to do the same thing every time, right? Pele. Yeah. One of his most famous non-goals ever was when the ball was approaching him and the goalie was coming out, and he let the ball run. He didn't touch it. So it went by both of them. And he had a full head of steam. The goalie had a full head of steam. The ball just went through, right? And then he ran onto it, and ironically enough, he missed it, which kind of undermines my example. But the point is, the question has always been, did he intentionally just let it run?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is, of course, because it was genius just to not touch it.
Yeah.
Right? And just let it run. And then once the keeper's momentum's, let him go this way, and yours is this way, and the ball's over here, you're going to be able to kick it in the net. Like I say, the ironic thing about it is he missed an open net, which
it's not a good look.
It's not a good look, but don't miss the important point, though, was it's Pele.
Yeah, I get it.
And so you're like, no, he didn't just miss it. He intentionally did not touch it. Intentionally just let the ball run.
Yeah.
Whereas if that were some younger player, I'd be like, how do you whiff on that? How do you fan on that? How do you know? I'd give him an earful. Why didn't you give it a touch? Go left or right of the goalkeeper, but why didn't you give it a touch? Anyway, so the authors say this kind of has very broad sociological and psychological implications. For when inconsistency is rewarded. All right. Any questions on that article?
No.
Overall, do you think good?
Well, one thing is, so they're all French business students.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think if you would recognize a Picasso painting and that's not George, bro. That's Picasso.
Exactly. Well, especially since, they did ask them some other background questions and they did some controls. They did some other stuff. I'm giving you a very simplified version of their paper. Very simplified. But yeah, the whole question, what happened, these French students, she'll be okay. It's no big deal. My dog is barking a little bit. That's what it goes. They asked them questions about how many times they'd been to a museum in the last year.
Yeah.
And, I think the average was 3 times or something like that. I don't know. It was high. Whereas I don't think the average American goes to a museum 3 times in the last year. Maybe go when they're forced to in grades. Yeah. But, yeah, you'd think they would have recognized some of them, but they didn't. So, well, enough that it wasn't a problem, right? What else do you think about the research? Good, bad?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds good. Here, why don't we stop this for just a sec? Can you come over here and pause it? Can you pause it?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it pause?